nice. Cost of doing business. My man hasn't done anything in a while. I don't know what this is about, but
say for the sake of argument, there's this, call him a provocateur, a conservative who makes his living off being a public figure, saying scandalously evil things in public because controversy equals attention, and attention equals brand recognition. He gets his writing gigs and interviews and guest spots, sometimes because people agree with the awful things he says. More often it's because he gets views. His economy runs on engagement, and hate clicks are still clicks. One revenue stream is speaking engagements, the college campus circuit. Fans at, let's say, UC Emeryville invite him as a guest lecturer. But UCE is broadly a progressive campus, which means his presence there would likely provoke a lot of outrage, maybe even a protest. And a protest would be pretty flippin' sweet. Protest means local news coverage, maybe more than local. Hell, the conservative media machine loves taking stories like this and blowing them up to national importance.
Including Bill Maher, by the way.
If he plays his cards right, he could get his words in front of millions of people instead of just the student.
Why don't you say or post anything about what's happening in Iran? I'm just trying to keep it a secret. That's why I covered it like numerous times on different broadcasts. But you just exposed me for trying to keep it a secret.
Body of UCM.
People that want me to talk about Iran, like, do you expect me to cover it literally 24/7? Like, I don't understand. I'm a broadcaster. I cover a broad variety of news, right? Iran being, of course, an incredibly important news story, which I have given adequate coverage to. I don't get it.
Of course, he's going to take that gig. But the progressive students at UCE are wise to his tricks. They've seen him pull this stunt at other UCs, Stockton, Bakersfield, Vacaville. So they make the decision, we're not going to protest. We're just going to let him speak. Let the boy stamp his feet, and in a month, no one will even remember he was here. As the date approaches and the provocateur sees he's not getting the response he wants, he starts hinting things on social media, trying to bait a reaction.
It does fit your anti-Kurd agenda, lol? What? Brother, not only am I like a secular Turk, I'm a very progressive person. What the fuck? That's crazy.
Psst, hey. I'm going to make jokes about the Holocaust. I'm going to say Americans treated their slaves well. Nothing. So he ups the ante, makes it personal. I'm going to put up pre-transition photos of your trans students. I'm going to out the queer students I've seen on Grindr. I'm going to name which of your students I think are illegal immigrants.
Milo Yiannopoulos did all of these things, okay, back in the day. He is describing what Innuendo Studios is doing here is precisely what Milo Yiannopoulos did, by the way. He did all of those things.
Student body's like, bro, do your worst. Nobody's falling for it. Until one student's like, hold up. He's going to dox immigrants in front of his audience of white nationalist gun nuts, and we're just going to let him? You know some of his fans were in Charlottesville, right? What we're seeing here is a game of chicken between one group of white conservative reactionaries and one group of, let's be honest, mostly white liberals, for whom the stakes are who gets paid attention to. The provocateur doesn't have the ammunition nor the optics to attack privileged liberals directly, so he pokes and prods at various social minorities whom privileged liberals are supposed to care about, until he gets a reaction. Going after people of color is a pure Xanatos gambit for his fans. Either they get a protest and a national audience hears their reactionary rhetoric, or there's no protest and they get to fuck with some immigrants. And because white liberals are largely ignorant to the threat posed to those immigrants, white liberals are not great at assessing the full scope of the danger. Often enough, this remains to them an argument about ideas and principles. To them, they are but words. until someone gets hit by a car or shot, and then it's who could have predicted? The provocateur's animating force is not hatred of people of color. It's hatred of white liberals, just as white liberals' animating force is less advocacy for people of color than moral victory over conservatives. Neither side acknowledges people of color as entities in this fight. They're viewed as tools for getting white people what they want, and their suffering is viewed as an acceptable byproduct. You've maybe heard the phrase, in the game of patriarchy, women are not the opposing team, they are the ball. Well, in the game of imperialist, white supremacist, capitalist patriarchy, minorities are not the opposing team. They are the cars, store windows, and newspaper kiosks that get wrecked when the home team loses. Or when the home team wins. It's the Eagles fan view of oppression. And make no mistake, weaponizing or disregarding students of color is still racism. But it's racism of a kind most white people have trouble recognizing, or to speak with a sharper edge, that white people often refuse to acknowledge. From the white provocateur who does not hate minorities directly, but is willing...
Come on, Eagles fans. Don't act like... So there's unironic Eagles fans going, come on, why are we catching strays? Bro, you eat horse manure when you win. Once you do that, it's over. Okay? Once one Eagles fan, one singular Eagle, decides to eat horse manure as a victory for winning the Super Bowl, like to celebrate a Super Bowl victory, is done. The entire fucking nation state of Philadelphia, which, yes, I called it a nation state on purpose, is now in perpetuity recognized as the caca eaters, okay?
To utilize the hatred of others to get what he wants from some white people who says, I will hurt them a lot just to hurt you a little, to the white liberal who does mental gymnastics to not come out and say, that is a black and brown sacrifice I'm willing to make. Racism is not always a passion, but it is tolerable, usable, easy to disregard. In a white supremacist world, it is the cost of doing business. Let me make it clear. Nothing about this is okay. Now, the weaponizing of minority suffering is employed against many minoritized groups. I could be making this video about transphobia or homophobia, and while many details would differ, I wouldn't even have to change my intro. Samuel R. Delaney, take a shot, argues that misogyny is the oldest bigotry, and therefore the model on which all other bigotries are based. I'm focusing on institutional racism as my chief example, first because this is America and the cup runneth over. Second, because in the 2016 election, the greatest indicator a person was going to vote Republican, more strongly correlated than being registered as a Republican, was racist sentiments. And third, because racism is a fundamental building block of fascism and a primary means of sowing discord on the left. But we'll get to that. I am going to curb my reflex to make every alt-right playbook some kind of definitive statement. I do not have the last word on American racism. If you want to hear about American racism from the people who experience it, here's a book. Here's 5 books. What I bring to the table is, I have, at this point, several decades experience being white, and in trying to explicate white supremacy, it is sometimes worthwhile to look at it from the inside. So my focus will be,
you do not need to post that.
What does whiteness mean to white people? American racial discourse has 4 principles.
Bro, you do not need... Dude, you are hindering your cause, man. God damn. You don't need to do that.
White characters. On the far right end, you've got the guy white people picture when they hear the word racist. Your Klansman, your neo-Nazi, your suit and tie ethno-nationalist. This guy knows he's a racist, and he's proud of it. Next to the white supremacist, you've got the white collaborator. The politician, public figure, or businessman who does not agree with the white supremacist on paper.
I can't get over the fact that every bread tuber has to look that way. Like, is there a law? Is there a fucking rule, like in the rule book? I'm going to move on. They make great videos. They're awesome.
but will seek out their votes, attention, or money.
Says
Next
you,
to
lol. Yeah, no, me. Very similar. You're right.
the collaborator, you've got the white moderate. People who ostensibly believe in racial justice as an end goal and are somewhat committed to bringing it about, but only with the cooperation of the white collaborator. It wouldn't be fair to do it without their consent, you see, and thus the white moderate spends a lot less time opposing collaborators than appealing to their better natures. They tend to operate on behalf of people of color rather than with them. Plainly put, the cost of doing business maneuver is this group using this group to attack this group using people of color as their weapon of choice. It is white supremacy in the form of 3 groups of white people fighting amongst themselves. Finally, on the far opposite end, you have the honest-to-goodness anti-racist, where the racist will support white supremacy, the collaborator uphold white supremacy, and the moderate seek to reform white supremacy. Only the anti-racist is trying to get rid of it. And even they are not free from racial bias. And if you tell one of them, you are not free from racial bias, it's not guaranteed they will react well. It's just, if you're trying to fight white supremacy, they're the white folks you have the best odds with. Now, this little chorus line is not how white people typically frame the situation. We usually think of racism as a binary. There are racists, and there are non-racists. In that framing, the provocateur is someone whose allegiance we get to debate. He willingly sacrifices people of color, but without personally hating them. Does that count as #racism? This debate lasts approximately the rest of your goddamn life, which should be evidence enough that the frame is wanting. In today's framing, there are several shades of racism, and there is anti-racism. There is no non. Now, before we map the choreography of how these 4 types interact, first, a quick note on how most white people think about whiteness. Short answer, whenever possible, they prefer not to. Whiteness in America. Is it vanilla? No. It's fior di latte. Nothing but milk and sugar. When non-whites are flavors, we are the base. In the same way one does not hear one's own accent. British people have accents.
That's not a lot of pots.
But we just speak English normal-like.
That's not a lot of pots.
If you have not built your whole identity around being white, you probably don't think about your whiteness very often, and perhaps even feel uncomfortable when one points it out. For it is the white experience to passively, unconsciously, conceive of oneself as a kind of raceless default. This is privilege.
That's why it's political. When there's a non-white actor playing a role that's traditionally given to white actors, that's, and you can pick and choose the different forms of identity there. It's not just, it doesn't extend to just like black people or anything like that.
Indeed, this is part of what makes privilege privilege.
They're woke.
It's the identity that's treated as a norm. The one you don't have to think about. A movie with an all-white cast is widely perceived as being in no way about race. But that's not true of one with an all-black cast. Identities being treated as defaults makes institutional racism difficult to understand even for well-meaning white people. How can I be racist?
Intelligent viewer, Hasan profiting off of racism every day and buys $1 million homes, multiple. One in this chatter's head. Specifically, he's probably going to ban me because I'm the only real one in the chat. No, I will not ban you. You are my pet now. I will pet you instead.
If I don't identify as a racist, how could I be part of a group I never opted into? But let us reflect. Would a group one never opted into not describe a minority? People don't choose to be gay, and while people also don't choose to be straight, being straight is normal. People don't come out as straight or have complex codes for signaling heterosexuality. Not that they'll admit to, at least.
Listen, brother. That's the future that you're looking down at. You're staring at the barrel of a gun, brother. We're going to have to fucking signal to everybody that we're straight in the future.
In lieu of other evidence, straightness is presumed. But if people clock you as gay, or even think they've clocked you as gay, then you stand out from the background. It makes you more visible, where the appearance of straightness makes you less so. Makes you the everyman. Of the many identities one may have at any given time on any given axis, there is typically only one default, whose rules operate differently to the rest. The more of these normal identities one possesses, the more accustomed one is to being the default. The idea is foreign that people might group one not by how one thinks of oneself, but by how one is perceived, and by how one impacts others.
Are the people you pull up from chat just chatters you want to have a conversation with, or just embarrassed?
Light-skinned Mexican
Both.
gets to be white is up to them. Whether or not you fit the definition of racist is not up to you. The boundaries are not policed from the inside. So, okay. Going again from right to left, this is where we find the titular alt-right. What's novel about the suit and tie ethno-nationalist is how they break from the iconography of racism. Their goal, like that of many racist people, is to attack and oppress people of color, but in such a way that the white establishment lets them get away with it. The average white person's shorthand for a racist is still primarily the Klansman and the neo-Nazi, respectively a rural working-class white nationalism and an urban working-class white nationalism. The alt-right is the gentrification of white nationalism. Their pocket squares and MBAs and $90 haircuts short out the white moderate's brain because they still associate white supremacy with white trash. Racism is worse than evil. It's common. It's why they insist reactionary conservatism is propped up by the white working class in flyover states, despite all evidence to the contrary.
The alt-right can't be as bad as everyone says, because whoever heard of a racist going to Harvard?
The alt-right bridges the gap
Yeah.
between white nationalism and the rest
Only the top dog races go to Harvard. Let's be real.
of white culture,
Like the
using
best
class
racists.
signifiers to gain access to the political and social capital of the more mainstream collaborator, and getting the moderate to treat them not as someone to be ignored, but someone to bargain with in good faith. The collaborator finds value in this relationship because, regardless of one's position on it, racism works. A police officer may not be personally racist, but when it's the end of the month and they need to hand out a few more tickets to make quota, it's safest to do so in a low-income neighborhood where the average driver can't make their life hell by hiring a lawyer. And due to decades of racist redlining, most low-income neighborhoods are disproportionately black and Latinx, so... And a prison warden
No
may not
Latinx,
be
he said
personally
Latinx.
racist, but white people are approved by jury selection more often than people who think the justice system itself is racist, so black and Latina people are the easiest to jail, and private prisons get more funding when they're full, so... And a conservative politician may not be personally racist, but black and Latina people predominantly vote Democrat, and since they're disproportionately imprisoned, if the politician denies convicts the right to vote, they're more likely to get reelected, so...
I don't know whether the labor unions and their bosses really hate me. That doesn't matter, but I know I'm not in their unions. I don't know if the real estate lobby is anything against black people, but I know the real estate lobbies keep me in the ghetto. I don't know if the Board of Education hates black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools that we have to go to.
Now, frequently enough, these people are self-identified, card-carrying racists. My point is, for this system of incentives and rewards to operate, they don't have to be. Any of them may, but none of them must. Racism exists, and it's efficient. And in a capitalist society where cops are competing for promotions, private prisons are competing for contracts, and politicians are competing for votes, if an unethical behavior sees a higher return than the alternative, then ethics are a luxury. There are hundreds of examples of businesses that claim, in periods of prosperity, that they prefer to do what is right over what is profitable. But what do they say when prosperity ends? Every boom has a bust. Since 1900, the US has spent 1 out of every 4 years in recession. And in the lean season, not using...
Oh, I'm so glad I didn't ban this guy. This is a perfect example. How am I a pet now? Racist much? Everyone in this chat, you're being brainwashed. Hasan is a part of the FBI trial on Twitch to hypnotize the public. Come on. That's a fucking great chatter. This is why Twitch lowered y'all ad revenue. Twitch didn't lower the ad revenue. They lowered the sub revenue. At the top of the hour, there's still a 60-second ad break, though, until this month ends and my contract is over. And if you no longer want to see those ads at the top of the fucking hour, all you need to do is subscribe. Hasan Lurker with a 20 gifted subs. Woo! At the top of the hour, there's a 6-second ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get one free Prime subscription a month. Use it on your favorite broadcaster, me. Or you can get gifted a sub. Like Matt NLT with a 5. Dylan is Unbreakable with a 5. Hasan Lurker with a 20. Like I said, that's 30. If you haven't gotten that, you're not going to get an ad break. I mean, you're not going to get a fucking gifted sub. Monty Gaming, thank you for the 5 gifted. Here's the 1-minute ad break now.
This generations old system built by white people to advantage their descendants is a liability. A values-based business typically goes one of 3 ways: compromising their values to stay competitive, getting bought by someone who compromised their values to stay competitive,
Twitch,
or sticking to their guns and facing a higher risk of going out of business. Many choose to do the right thing, and some even survive. But that's beating the odds. The market trends towards the optimal strategy. No one ever went broke appealing to the ignorance of white people. The collaborator treating non-white suffering as the cost of doing business also works rhetorically.
Another reason why it's dumb as fuck to be a grifter on the left, and that's why you see so many more grifters, if not all of them, on the right. Obama Beats Greek Kebab, thank you for the 5 gifted. Monty Gaming and Dr. Sleepy Fist 0, thank you for the 5 gifted.
The average conservative citizen doesn't know anything about the Syrian civil war, but they know the refugee crisis is something the left seems to care about. So demonizing refugees is mutually beneficial for pundits and politicians who want to rally their base by spiting liberals, and for white supremacists who want to mainstream racism against Arabs. The average conservative citizen doesn't understand epidemiology, but they don't want to blame their own party for letting 1 million die of COVID, so calling it the Chinese virus is mutually beneficial for pundits and politicians who want to deflect blame onto a foreign nation, and for white supremacists who want to mainstream racism against Asians. And yet, despite this blatancy in collaborating with white supremacists and having eerily similar goals to white supremacists, the collaborator insists that they are themselves non-racist. Their decades of opposing affirmative action, right to assembly, police reform, fair voting efforts, redistricting, funding for public schools, prisoners' rights, religious tolerance, shutting down Guantanamo, accessibility for non-English speakers, immigration, investment in low-income neighborhoods, decolonizing school curricula, Indigenous Peoples Day, putting Harriet Tubman on the 20, kneeling,
thank you for the
ending
10
drug
gifted.
war, or withdrawing from the Middle East, are framed as problems of implementation. We agree with the aim of closing the racial wealth gap, just not like this.
Kind of racist? Wait, what the fuck do you mean it's kind of racist? This is literally the concept that MLK talked about with respect to the white moderate. He's quite literally describing what the white moderate, and I think he chose those words carefully. Like, he chose that context carefully to claim the white moderate.
Yes. We agree with the aim of Latin Americans entering the country, just not like this. We agree with the aim of peaceful protest, just not like this. And if we on the left are to ask, how exactly are we supposed to get this without this? Oh, coming up with that solution? That's our job. And if it's not getting done, it's because we haven't come up with a solution they like yet. And probably what they don't like about our solutions is that we implied the problem was racism. Yes, white people are overrepresented in dozens of industries nationwide, but have you considered that it's a fluke? Pitch me a solution.
Bro, you can't tell me there are plenty of grifters on the left. Look at Second Thought, for example. Man hasn't read a scrap of theory and only talks about culture war bullshit. But let me guess, you're giving JT a pass because he's lining your pockets with CIA and Nestle dollars. Fuck, we gotta ban this guy. He's on it. He's on it. He called us out, dude. No, take another second off. He's still talking. Still chatting. Fuck. Shit. I'm trying to silence him, and it's too hard.
For it being a fluke. The collaborators' white supremacy exists in the negative space. They agree racism exists. They agree we should oppose it. But they disagree that any individual thing you're talking about is an example of it. Getting a Republican to identify an actual incident of systemic racism is like trying to point at your shadow with a flashlight. And it's reasonable to ask, Jesus, how far can these guys push the envelope before the rest of the establishment calls them what they are? But if you're waiting for the moment a white moderate agrees mainstream conservatism has done something unacceptably and unequivocally racist, you're underestimating how long white people can equivocate. There's a lot to say about the white moderate, and I'm about to be that lefty who expends as many words complaining about liberals as he does fascists, but look, as much as this series is about the tactics of the far right, it is at least as much about how the center left is susceptible to them and complicit. So, okay, when a Democrat loses an election, what happens with the white liberal pundit class? Well, there's suddenly a lot of chatter about how to talk to your racist uncle over Thanksgiving, about how liberals in red states can contact their representatives, about the value of debate. This is our fault, they say. We let this happen because
Dude, you're going to spirited debate your fucking family members into not being racist. Is such a funny take from predominantly white liberals that unironically have never had a Thanksgiving with family members that just straight up will never have that conversation. Like, it's like people who live in fucking New Hampshire and have relatives that are all just as liberal as they are. So they just don't understand it. It's like, dude, you could try to have that conversation. And I joke about it. I meme about it. Like, yeah, own your cousins and uncles in the marketplace of ideas and debate for Thanksgiving because I like to see chaos. And I think it's funny and it's good content. But it's just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to do that. Okay? Because it's like an intrinsic part of their existence. A lot of these values are incredibly well defined. And you learn about them from as early as like your first year of life, your first year of existence. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. You cannot, without material restitution, you're not going to be able to actually legitimately change people's minds one person at a time. Even if you were able to change people's minds one person at a time, you're still not going to be able to enact systemic change.
We didn't have enough conversations with white conservatives. You hear a lot more of that talk than about how the gutting of the Voting Rights Act
Like, I know people